Hi, everyone. Julie Baker, Executive Director, California Arts Advocates, here today to review our 2022-2023 legislative budget asks that you will, if you're engaging in Arts Advocacy Week or anytime you want to help support some of these issues. These are the overview of what we're asking for right now in the California budget session. Just so you also are aware, for example, the governor introduces things in January. Then they get heard by the legislature. The legislature can also introduce budget asks and their priorities. Then by May 10th, we will see the governor's what is called the May revise. This will get a sense of where the budget is going. And then by June 15th, we will see a budget then submitted by the legislature back to the governor for his signature or not within 10 days. So you'll see now we're almost at May 1st that we are deep into the budget process. California has an estimated $50 billion budget surplus. And these are the specific asks that we are tracking or presenting or promoting or lobbying and trying to influence for the recovery of the arts, culture, and creative industries. These are things that either the governor has introduced, a legislature has introduced, other coalition members, people that we work closely with have introduced, or support or sponsor, or things that we also think would be critical to, again, the recovery of the sector and being able to see living wages, equitable distribution of funding for the workforce as well. So I'm going to get started. And the first item is something that actually we, California Arts Advocates, currently are really trying to push. We do not yet have the governor having this in his May revise. We don't know what's in the May revise until about May 10th, nor do we have a legislator introducing this and championing it. So really, it's going to be the will of the people that will need to really get this moving forward. And that is to increase the baseline funding for the state arts agency, which is the California Arts Council. The California Arts Council baseline budget is $26 million in local assistance funding. As you'll see in the graph on the bottom of the screen, it shows how many, where has this baseline funding been over the last several years. So in the year 2000, which as we know is 22 years ago, it was at $30.7 million. In that, if we adjusted for inflation, today, that should be $44.7 million. But if you go to the bottom and in the last bar in the green in 21, 2022, and in fact, over the last 3 years, baseline funding for the California Arts Council has remained at $26 million. Now, if we go back a little bit, you'll see that that's quite a significant increase from 10 years of $1 million. And we've been able to, as the lobbying organization, California Arts Advocates, along with your help and support and everybody else, to be able to increase that. But $26 million equates to 66 cents per capita, which means that there are approximately 40 million people in California. So in other words, that's only 66 cents per person. And if we compare it to some other states, leading states for the arts, for example, like New York, Massachusetts, they're over $2 in baseline funding per capita. And if you compare it to a state like Minnesota, they're over $6. So we're really not leading, even though California represents 25% of the United States creative industries. Let me also note that last year in the 21-22 budget, we were able to see an increase of $100 million to the Arts Council, but do note that that is not in baseline funding. This was for special projects like the California Creative Corps, which received $60 million, and then creative youth development programs at the CAC for $40 million. So what we're talking about again is how do we take the main baseline budget allocation to the Arts Council and increase it. And our ask, and again, it's leading right now by California Arts Advocates, not by a legislator or the administration yet, but with your help, we can push it there, is 66 cents, moving from 66 cents to $1. And that's why we say $1 for the arts, which would get us to $40 million in baseline budget allocation or local assistance funding, which would go into all communities across the state of California. There are 58 counties. It would be emphasizing that and emphasizing communities that have been historically marginalized, both communities of color and rural communities that do not access at the same level of philanthropy that maybe some of the urban cores do. And so this is really a prioritization of an increase of $14 million per year over the next 3 years, or $42 million total budget ask to the legislature and the administration. So that's something that we are hoping to see in the May revise. We'll see what comes out by May 10th. Stay tuned. But what you can do to help is go to our Action Center on our website and send in a letter to your elected official, your local state representatives, both in the Assembly and the Senate, as well as to the governor, and let them know how important it is to see the baseline budget increase for the Arts Council. And again, this is so that we can see an on-ramp for sustained funding over at least 3 years. These one-time investments have been historic. $100 million was historic. But what we know is in order for it really to be transformative, it needs to be sustained. And we also know that the recovery for our sector in particular, arts and culture, is going to take at least till 2025. And these are studies by McKinsey and Company and others. So we really want to see this level of funding increase baseline funding for the Arts Council. All right, we're going to go to our next budget ask. So the next one is, if you are someone who's been working with us in the past, last year in the 21-22 legislative season and session, we were really excited when Senator Ben Allen from Santa Monica, and also the chair of the Joint Committee on the Arts, introduced Senate Bill 628, which is the California Creative Workforce Act. California Arts Advocates was the lead sponsor on this bill, along with our colleagues at Arts for LA, who also sponsored it. And this was historic. It's the first creative workforce bill in the United States that does state that California will prioritize creative workforce development. This bill was signed on October 9th by the governor. And that is really exciting that we have this precedent and this legislation that does state prioritization, as well as states that it will also prioritize communities and people who have faced barriers to employment in order to really see much more diversity in the creative workforce, as well as a living wage. Now, a living wage in Los Angeles versus a living wage in Humboldt County are going to be different. So based on the MIT calculator in California, the average living wage is $20 an hour. What Senator Allen now has asked of the Senate leadership is to prioritize in the California budget for 2022-2023 a $50 million budget allocation to actually implement the California Creative Workforce Act. In our estimation, that would create 1,000 new creative industry jobs in the state of California with a $50 million one-time investment over 2 years. It would go to the California Arts Council for them to work with the Workforce Development Board in collaboration with them to establish this program. We're really excited about it. We worked hard to get this budget passed, this bill passed last year, but now we need funding for it to actually be truly implemented and for California to really not just say it's a priority, but make it for real a priority. And just also something to note that's an important fact is that according to the Bureau of Economic Analysis, which is out of DC, Washington, DC, 100,000 arts jobs were lost between 2019 and 2020. The data, the most recent data is 2020. It was released in March of this year. So you can see that this creative workforce desperately needs some pipeline introduction and support. And we also know from many, many studies that the industry is certainly not as diverse, nor is it as supportive in terms of living and thriving wages. So both of these things are important tenets of the California Creative Workforce Act. So again, you can go to our Action Center on our website and you can send in a letter that will both state we would like the dollar for the arts as well as the $50 million for the California Creative Workforce Act of 2021. This has been introduced by Senator Ben Allen for the budget ask, but now we need to make sure it's prioritized in the legislature's final budget as well as the governor's budget. And so we need your help to make that happen. All right, next slide. In addition, the governor, as I mentioned, in January, brings out the first, revision or review of the budget. And in the governor's budget in January, there were 3 specific items that we want to highlight that we are in support of, that, but also that you can also talk about if you're meeting with your elected official. One is the California Cultural Districts Program. This was actually legislation that was passed in 2015, Assembly Bill 189, that was introduced by Richard Bloom, Assemblymember Richard Bloom. And it was piloted by the California Arts Council. And there were 14 pilot programs, districts established in 2017. However, this has been an unfunded mandate. In other words, it was established and the pilot developed, but the Arts Council had to take it out of their general budget, that $26 million, in order to build the program. And what they were able to put towards the Cultural Districts Program was only $10,000 over 2 years, $5,000 a year for each of these pilots. Then they did a report so that the legislature could review what is the success of this legislation. And what the report highlighted was that, number one, this is a good program to have for the state of California. But number 2, it really needs to be funded in order for it to be successful. And number 3, that they really need to expand it to truly reflect the diversity of cultural and communities across the state of California. So as you can see from the map on this, you can see where the 14 pilots are. Of course, there are many, many, many more cultural districts already established in our communities that have been there. And part of the job of this type of legislation, and particularly if it's funded, is to protect and enhance and support those original cultural districts that exist in our communities, but to give them the financial support, the technical assistance to both revere and respectfully support what's going on in those communities, and be able to keep jobs in those communities, and be able to celebrate those cultural heritage of those communities. So we are in support of that $30 million that the governor put in the budget for cultural districts, both the pilots and the expansion of the program. And again, you can lend your support through our Action Center. The governor also put $173,000 for the California Poet Laureate and Youth Poet Laureate program, and then a $50 million one-time general fund for the California Department of Parks and Rec to create a new California cultural and art installations in the parks program for state and local parks to reflect cultural heritage, connect the public to natural resources of state and local parks, and provide contemporary experiences to visitors. We love to see arts funding being requested by other agencies. We love to see opportunities for artists and for arts organizations as well. And so we're in support of that $50 million one-time general fund for the California Department of Parks and Rec. But of course, we also really, really want to see that $1 for the arts, because if you have ever tried to apply for a California Arts Council grant, we know that consistently they are oversubscribed. And that's something to note when you are in your meetings, or if you're talking to an elected official. We can, for example, let you know that in the artist fellowship program, the artist grant program, there was over 3,000 artists that applied for grants last year, and only 200 were able to receive funding. And that is because we are talking about a very small budget allocation of only $26 million to the California Arts Council. All right, next slide. Finally, I wanted to mention 2 other items that are not being led by our organization, California Arts Advocates, but we are in support of and want you to be aware of, and also suggest that you support. One of them is Senate Bill 1116, and that has been introduced by Senator Anthony Portantino. And it is the Equitable Payroll Fund. It is to pass Performing Arts Equitable Payroll Fund. And this is specifically for performing arts organizations, nonprofits, under $2 million in the state of California, to support them with their payroll related expenses. So that's directly for payroll as well as other expenses related to payroll. And this is really in reflection of the impact of Assembly Bill 5 and how you had to change most everyone from an independent contractor to an employee. So when we're talking about the performing arts and you're talking about maybe 100 people for a performance, whether it's ballet, symphony, theater performances, dance, and you need to make all of those folks into employees, and where in the past maybe they've been independent contractors, this is a significant increase in your budget. Whereas you don't really see the revenue on the earned revenue side to be able to support that, because we would have to make ticket prices extremely high, as well as the fact that many of these arts organizations that are small budget are doing these for educational purposes. They're doing them to support and celebrate cultures within local communities. They're doing it for, again, education purposes. So you want to make sure that we are making the arts accessible, we are paying people a living wage, and that we are in compliance with California's labor laws. And so Senate Bill 1116 is a great and creative solution to this problem. It is a budget ask of $300 million, I believe, over the next 3 years, in order to be able to support the on-ramping of people into the industry, to make sure that we are sustaining our performing arts organizations, our nonprofit, small budget performing arts organizations around the state of California. This is a workforce bill as well. This ensures that these 100 people, or however many may be in your performing arts organization, that are putting on these performances, these large ensemble performances, are able to pay people. And so that is really a workforce, and this is jobs creation. So very much in support of this, excited to see this coming through. The other thing that we are in support of that has been introduced by Senator John Laird is Senate Bill 963, and this is being supported by the California Association of Museums. They are the sponsor of this, and I might say that Senate Bill 1116, the sponsors are the Theater Producers of Southern California and Actors Equity Association, and again, California Arts Advocates is in support. Now, again, back to Senate Bill 963. We are also in support of this. And for more information, again, in our Action Center, you can go to California Association Museums website, and they'll tell you more specifics on what are the action items you should be taking. But this is an overall $125 million allocation, $50 million for the museum grants program, and $75 million to support the California and Cultural and Historical Endowment grants at the California Natural Resources Agency. There's also some specifics in the legislation to really also address some of the ways the grants programs are being developed. And so we encourage you to review that and to support it. The Museums Grants Program last year in 21-22 received $50 million. This was the first time that there was actually a budget allocation for it. In the past, it has just been through license plates funding. So we're really excited to see this happening. It's very critical, again, for all the levels and sizes of museums and types of museums and cultural heritage organizations receive support from the state of California. So that gives you an overview of some of the highlights of the things that we are trying to see through the California budget process, which again will wrap up sometime mid-June, early July. And we encourage you to follow everything at californiansforthearts.org's website, and then specifically inside of there, our California Arts Advocates Action Center. So if you have any questions, always feel free to reach out to myself, to our staff, and send us an email or give us a call. And we look forward to working with you to fortify the recovery of California's arts, culture, and creative industries and workforce, because the future of California is creative. Thanks so much for listening.